Hi there again. We are on chapter 6 of The Yearling by Marjorie Kennan Rawlings. So here we go. Chapter 6. Oh, sorry. Sorry, my bad. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 of The Yearling. Whew, I almost got ahead of myself. Penny sat at breakfast. Well, Penny said at breakfast. Let me start all over again. Chapter 5 of The Yearling. Can you tell it's Wednesday? I mean, really. Chapter 5 of The Yearling by Marjorie Kennan Rawlings. Penny said at breakfast, "Well, it's trade for a new gun or court trouble." Old Julia was better. Her wounds were clean without swelling. She was exhausted from loss of blood and wanted only to sleep. She had lapped a little milk from the gourd Penny held for her. "How come you aim to buy a new gun?" Ma Baxter asked, "and not money scarcely for taxes?" "I said trade," Penny corrected. "Every day you get the best of a trade, I'll eat my washpot." "Now, Ma, I wouldn't even crave to beat a man, but there's trades where all is satisfied." "What you got to trade with?" "The Vice." "Who'd have him?" "He's a good catch dog." "Good to catch biscuits." "You know as good as I do the Forresters is fools for dogs." "Ezra Baxter, do you go trading with the Forresters? You'll do to come home. Do good to come home wearing your breeches." "Well, that's where me and Jody's heading for today." Penny spoke with a firmness against which the bulk of his wife was sheer air. She sighed. "All right, leave me with nobody to split my wood or fetch me water or care do I drop in my tracks. Go, take him. I ain't never left you without wood nor water." Jody listened anxiously. He would rather visit the Forresters than eat. "Jody's got to mix with men and learn the ways of men," Penny said. "The Forresters is a fine place to begin. Do he learn from them? He'll learn to have a heart as black as midnight." "He might learn from them not to. Anyway, that's where we're going." He rose from the table. "I'll fetch water, and Jody, you go split a bait of wood." "You want a tote lunch?" she called after him. "I'd not insult my neighbors that-a-way. We'll noon with them." Jody hurried to the woodpile. Every blow of the axe on that fat pine brought him closer to the Forresters and his friend Fodderwing. He split a plentiful amount and carried enough to the kitchen to fill his mother's wood box. His father had not yet returned from the sinkhole with his load of water. Jody hurried to the lot and saddled the horse. If the horse were ready and waiting, they might get off before his mother discovered some fresh pretext for detaining him. He saw Penny coming down the sand road from the west, bowed under the ox yoke with the two heavy wooden buckets brimming with water. He ran to help him ease the load to the ground, for a lack of balance would tumble the buckets headlong and the tedious hauling would have to be done all over again. "Caesar's saddled," he said, "and the woods is a fire." "And the woods is a fire, I take it," Penny grinned. "All right, leave me put on my trading coat and tie, up rip, and get my gun, and we're long gone." Oh, let me reread that. "All right, leave me put on my trading coat and tie up Rit and get my gun, and we're long gone." The saddle had been bought of the Forresters, having proved a trifle small for any of their great butts. It held Penny and Jody together in comfort. "Get in front, son, but do you keep outgrowing me, you'll be obliged to ride behind, for I can't see the road before me. Here, Perk, heel up." The Feist fell in behind. He stopped once and looked back over his shoulder. "I hope it's your last look," Penny told him. Caesar, well rested, went into a steady trot. His old back was broad, the saddle was wide, and riding so with his father braced behind him was as comfortable, Jody thought, as a rocking chair. The sand road was a sunny ribbon leaf shadowed. Wait a second. I gotta read better. The sand road was a sunny ribbon, leaf shadowed. West, by the sinkhole, the road forked, one branch continuing on to Forresters Island, the other turning north. Ancient axe marks on venerable long-leaf pines blazed the turn to the northerly trail. "Did you or the Forresters make them blazes?" Jody asked. "Them was cut before me and the Forresters was ever here to tell of. Why, son, some so deep and them pines grows so slow, I'd not be surprised with some of 'em Spanish blazes. That teacher never learned you no history last year? Why, boy, the Spaniards made this trail. This right here that we're leaving now is the old Spanish trail clear across Florida. It split back near Fort Butler. The southern goes to Tampa. It's the Dragoon Trail. This and here's the Black Bear." Jody turned his big eyes to his father. "You reckon the Spaniards fit the bears?" "I reckon they had to when they stopped to camp. They had Injuns to fight and bears and panther cats, same as us, only we ain't got the Injuns." Jody stared about him. The pine woods were suddenly populous. "Is there any Spaniards hereabouts now?" "There's nary a man living, Jody, has ever heard his grandpappy say he'd ever seen a Spaniard. The Spaniards come from across the ocean and went trading and fighting and marching across Florida, and no man knows where they're gone." The business of the spring woods went forward leisurely in the golden morning. Redbirds were mating, and the crested males were everywhere, singing until Baxter's Island dripped with the sweetness of the sound. "It's better than fiddling and guitaring, ain't it?" Penny said. Jody came back to the scrub with a start. He had been halfway across the ocean with the Spaniards. The sweet gums were in full new leaf. The flowers of redbud and jessamine and dogwood had come and gone, but huckleberries and tee and dog tongue were in full bloom. The road ran to the west through a mile of tender green of white and rosy blossoming. Wild honeybees hummed in the small lace-like flowers of the St. Augustine grapes. The road narrowed past an abandoned clearing. Caesar slowed to a walk. The scrub closed in around him. Scrub oak and gallberry and myrtle bushes brushed their legs. The growth was thick and low, and there was only occasional shade. The April sun was high and strong. Caesar was sweating, and the stirrup leathers rubbed and squeaked. 2 miles of the way were hot and silent. Only jories darted among the bushes. A fox crossed, dragging his brush in a yellow shape that might have been a wildcat shot almost invisibly into the myrtle. Then the road widened, the vegetation withdrew, and the landmark that was the tall trees of Forresters Island lifted ahead. Penny dismounted and picked up the Feist and mounted again, holding the dog in his arms. Jody said, "Why are you toting him?" "Just you never mind." They passed into hammock, cool and deep, arched with palms and live oaks. The road wound about, and the weathered gray of the Forrester cabin showed under a giant oak. A pond showed beyond and below it. Penny said, "Now don't you torment Fatherween." "I don't never torment him. He's my friend." "That's good. He's a second setting, and he ain't to blame for hatching out peculiar." "He's my best friend, 'cept Oliver." You better stick to Oliver. His tail's as tall as Bottomwing's, but at least he knows when he's lying." Suddenly the quiet of the forest exploded. A commotion broke loose inside the cabin. The sound came of chairs hurled across its width. A large object crashed, a glass shattered, and heavy feet stamped on the plank floor, and the voices of male Forresters beat against the walls. A female voice shrilled above the tumult. The door flew wide and a pack of dogs streamed into the open. Ma Forrester flailed at them with her hearth broom as they raced for safety. Her sons crowded behind her. Penny called, "It's safe for a feller to get down here?" The Forresters roared greetings to the Baxters and commands to the dogs. Ma Forrester lifted her gingham apron in both hands and waved it up and down like a flag. The shouts of welcome were so mingled with the orders to the dogs that Jody was uncomfortable, faintly uncertain of the reception. "Get down and come in! Get away, you blasted bacon thieves! Here, Hattie, get to tarnation!" Ma Forrester swooped after the dogs and they scattered into the forest. "Penny Baxter! Jody, get down and come in!" Jody dropped to the ground and she thumped him on the back. She smelled of snuff and of wood smoke. The odor did not offend him, but he was obliged to think of the delicate sweet scent of Grandma Hutto. Penny dismounted. He held the fies tenderly. The Forresters milled about him. Buck led the horse away to the corral. Millwell caught Jody up and swung him over one shoulder and to the ground again as though he swung a puppy. Beyond, down the cabin steps, Jody saw Fodderwing hurrying toward him. The humped and twisted body moved in a series of contortions, like a wounded ape. Fodderwing lifted his walking stick and waved it. Jody ran to meet him. Fodderwing's face was luminous. He cried, "Jody!" They stood embarrassed and delighted. A sense of pleasure came over Jody that he felt with no one else. His friend's body was no more unnatural to him than the body of a chameleon or a possum. He took the word of grown folks that Fodderwing was witless. He himself would have known better than to do the thing that had given Fodderwing his name. The youngest Forrester had conceived the idea that if he could attach himself to something light and airy, he could float from the roof tree of the barn as gently as any bird. He had attached great bundles of fodder, cowpea hay to his arms, and jumped. He had survived miraculously, adding a few broken bones further to contort the hunchbacked frame with which he had been born. It was a crazy thing to do, of course, yet privately, Jody felt, something of the sort might work. He had himself often thought of kites, very large kites, and some secret understanding was his of the crippled boy's longing for flight, for lightness, for a moment's freedom from his body, earthbound and bent and stumbling. He said, "Hey," Fodderwing said, "I got a baby coon." He had always a new pet. "Let's go see it." Fodderwing led him back of the cabin to a collection of boxes and cages that sheltered his changing assortment of birds and creatures. "My eagle died," Fodderwing said. "He was too wild to pen." The pair of black swamp rabbits was not new. "They won't raise no young'uns," Fodderwing complained. "I'm fixin' to turn 'em loose." A fox squirrel worked an endless treadle. "I'll give him to you," Fodderwing offered. "I can get me another." Jody's hopes lifted and fell. "Ma won't let me keep nothing." His heart swelled, aching for the fox squirrel. "Here's the coon. Here's Racket." A black nose protruded between narrow slats. A tiny black paw, like a nigger's baby hand, reached out. Fodderwing lifted a slat and brought out the coon. It clung to his arm and gave a strange, cheering cry. "You can hold him. He'll not bite you." Jody cuddled the coon against him. He thought he had never seen or touched a thing so delightful. The gray fur was as soft as his mother's outing flannel nightgown. The pointed face was masked across the eyes with a black bar. The bushy tail was beautifully ringed. The coon nibbled at his flesh and cried again. "He wants his sugar teat," Father Wing said maternally. "Let's take him to the house whilst the dogs is out. He mighty skeered of the dogs, but he'll get used to 'em. He don't like no commotion." "What was you all fighting about?" Jody asked when we come up. "I wasn't into it," Father Wing said with disdain. "It was them." "What was it?" "One of the dogs wet in the middle of the floor. They couldn't agree whose dog 'twas done it." And that's the end of chapter 5. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace.